And I want to talk a little bit about the mid-range receiver this week. I think it's a really interesting range in terms of I think there's a couple guys in here who are really chalky, but I think like the 5,000 to 6,500 range, let's call it, is going to be really instrumental in kind of finding guys in here that you want to, we talked about the expensive guys, the cheap guys, finding someone here that's going to do really well, or even a couple guys we want to play 4 receivers. I think it's going to be really important. First of all, I think the chalk guys. I think that Van Jefferson at 5,600 is going to be very popular. There's no Odell Beckham Jr. Van Jefferson had the long touchdown last week. I know he only had 3 targets. He's had a lot of targets before that, but been really involved in the Rams offense. Pretty much the last 6 weeks, he's been a big part. You take OBJ out, Robert Woods is obviously out. I think he's really popular at 5,600. The other guy who I think in here might be popular just because of the low price and the big name is DK Metcalf, 6,200 in the same game at the Rams. Tyler Lockett went on the COVID list. There's some talk he might be able to get off of it, but if he doesn't play, there's no Jalen Ramsey. I know he was only 4 for 43 last week, and he's been, he doesn't have 60 yards in the game since week 7, which is a crazy run for DK Metcalf. But no Lockett. Metcalf had a touchdown back on a penalty last week. It feels like it's about to happen. So I think those two guys will be pretty popular. I want to get your feel on. You think that's going to be some good popularity, or you think you're going to go elsewhere? And if so, elsewhere, where would it be in this range?
Oh, yeah. Well, DK really hurt my feelings last week. You mentioned he had that touchdown called back.
Yep.
Then they tried to get him a touchdown on a little slant from about the 3-yard line that Russ just threw right behind him. He was wide open.
Oh, bad. It could have been such a good game.
But if Lockett is out, yeah, I think you got to have some interest in DK, especially with Jalen Ramsey not there. Yeah, it all makes sense. They're trying to get him the ball more. I understand that. So I'd like DK if Lockett is out. Van Jefferson, yeah, I think he'll be the chalky one in that range, and rightfully so. Touchdown in 3 straight weeks. No Odell, no Robert Woods. Like you mentioned, only 3 targets last week, but in the 4 previous games, he was averaging 8 targets. So I'd expect something like that without Beckham in there. Just like a really good young player, good deep threat. It was cool. After his touchdown last week, there's a video of him coming over to the sidelines, thanking Sean McVay for the opportunity, thanking him for believing in him. Yeah, it was cool to see. Some guys in that range that might be less popular. There's a few of them that are in good spots. I really like the Cardinals wide receivers without DeAndre Hopkins. AJ Green, I know that's not 5K, but he's 4.9. So
close enough.
Yeah. He saw 10 targets last week. Kyler was just looking his way first every time.
Even with Hopkins in there, before he was playing last week, it seemed like every time he dropped back, it was AJ Green again. It's funny because they're number 18, number 10. You're like, oh, there's DeAndre. You're like, oh, nope, AJ Green again.
Yeah, and I know people have some sort of reservations about AJ Green, I guess because of his age and injury history, but he's looked pretty good for most of the season. He looked pretty good on Monday night, and Detroit has given up huge games to receivers this season. So I'm going to take Kyler Murray's number 1 wide receiver for 4,900. That looks pretty good to me. I also think it's a great spot for Christian Kirk. He should see a bunch of targets playing in the slot. Again, same with Green, amazing matchup, and no Hopkins. They also have banged up running backs. So I think the first place I'm looking is these Arizona guys. What about you in that range, Scott? What do you like?
Yeah, I did like the Arizona guys too. I think Kirk will probably be more popular than Green, just like you said. I think people are a little wary of AJ Green, but there's a number of guys in this range. I think if you want to get away from Jefferson or Metcalf, there's a lot of ways to go. It's kind of a fun range. I think that Brandon Cooks is very much live right now. It's weird. We talked earlier in the year about, as long as Tyrod Taylor's in, Brandon Cooks will be good, but he's been really good the last couple games with Davis Mills. He was 8 for 101, 11 targets last week. This is Houston's always in a good game script. I mean, they're always trailing, but they're at Jacksonville. They are a little bit of an underdog. I know it's Jacksonville. Who knows what to expect there, but the matchup's good. It's going to be a little bit back and forth game. I think both teams have nothing to lose. Maybe they air it out a little bit, but I think Brandon Cooks is safe to see, double-digit targets, which is hard to find in this range. And the other guy in here that is the same price at 1,500 is Russell Gage. I think that we talked before about the Niners cornerbacks just can't guard guys right now. Dante Johnson's out. We're down to Josh Norman and whoever else, maybe Emmanuel Mosley is out. They just don't. They were not great before, and now they just have a lot of guys that are hurt. So I think Russell Gage was only 4 for 64 last week on 6 targets. They had a huge week the week before. I just think, the Niners are 27th in points per game to wide receivers. I just don't think they can guard receivers right now. Russell Gage is not the Jamar Chase we had last week, or Metcalf or Lockett, maybe a couple weeks before that when Seattle beat them. But I think Gage at 5,800, we'll see a guy that might approach double-digit targets and could get loose. I think that the Niners cornerbacks just can't guard anybody right now. And I try and hide when I watch games. I'm like, I hope the other coach doesn't realize this, but you got to think that Matt Ryan knows, where the weaknesses are. You're not gonna run against the Niners. They'll probably throw to Cordell Patterson a little more too, but I think that Gage is in a good spot here to really be really solid with some potential upside there too.
Yeah. So I want to piggyback on that on your Brandon Cooks call, because I was one of those guys that said I would prefer to roster him with Tyrod Taylor, and I at least was wrong about that, or I'd rather roster him with Davis Mills.
It's been weird. He's been good with Mills the last couple games.
Mills started, I think, 14 of 14 last week against the Seahawks. So I'm okay with going to Cooks for double-digit targets. Another guy, I just can't quit Julio Jones when he's the number one receiver and he's 5,400. I've got to mention it. He would have played more last week if they weren't blowing out Jacksonville. I'd expect him to play more this week, and they just don't have any weapons still without A.J. Brown and without Derrick Henry, and Pittsburgh's given up Pittsburgh's defense has gotten crushed for the last month.
Yeah.
So I see Julio Jones getting more targets. I see him getting some end zone targets, and I don't think people are going to roster him. So I don't really mind that either.
Yeah, this range is great. I mean, we got T. Higgins is still 6,500. He was great again last week. He has 3 straight 100-yard games. Brandon Ayuk is 6,300. He had a touchdown last week, 6+ targets in 6 of 7 games. That one scares me a little bit more with both Kittle and Deebo Samuel active, but they have been looking to Ayuk a lot. I mean, 11 targets last week. I think Deebo had 1. So it's very strange how it's kind of shifted a little bit. But that one makes me a little bit more worried if the Niners do get up, and with the 2 other spots. But then the last guy I want to talk about this range, who I think is interesting, at 5,900, Chase Claypool. A ton of talk about all the mistakes he made last week. He had a drop pass. He had that 4th down where he celebrated rather than taking the ball back to the referee or the umpire there. But he was still 8 for 93 on 9 targets. He has 8+ targets in 3 of his last 4 games. We talked about Deontay Johnson earlier, but Ben's going to throw the ball. They're going to fling it around a little bit. It's not always deep, but there's a lot of targets there. Claypool's weird. He had 11 touchdowns last year. I mean, we talked about he's a touchdown guy. He can score at a time. Has 1 this year. You got to figure that that's got to be coming a little bit. His snaps are down a little bit the last couple weeks. He's had that turf toe thing. Maybe they're managing a little bit. When he's in, they're using him a lot. And I don't think anybody's going to play Claypool. The narrative around him is so negative right now that people are going to be like, I'll play Marquise Brown. I'll play DK Metcalf. I'll play Brandon Cooks instead. I think Claypool goes really, really under-owned this week in a tournament. I think you might get him at 3 or 4%. I think that's a really spicy one with a guy that is getting targets and has some upside to score some touchdowns too.